So, something that's been on my mind a lot lately is what it would take to start a revolution. So, personally, I think that we're due for a revolution. And I'm talking about the ones that in a few hundred years from now they would write in history books. Something that would be viewed as a pivotal moment in the history of the West, um, or even the world in general. Now, the reason that I bring this up is because you kind of look at what's going on in the world right now. I live in America, and you look at what's going on in the West and even in like the UK and places like that, like first world countries. Um, and I think the absurdity of like what's going on has just kind of gotten to a point where you can't avoid it anymore. It needs to be discussed. And this is coming from the perspective of a 21-year-old. So I'm trying to like enter the workforce and start adulthood and things like this, and I'm already recognizing all these things. So I'm going to kind of bounce around in a few different things as to or like reasons why I think that a revolution is due. And I think you're probably going to watch this video and most people will agree with me for the most part. Definitely things you might disagree with, but it's a combination of many things, right? And the first one I want to talk about is politics. Now, I'm not going to get into specifics of politics, but what I will say is, you obviously have your different sides of politics. You have the left, the right, Republicans, Democrats, liberals, conservatives, however you want to say it. It doesn't matter. But you kind of notice how these two sides are like opposite, and then you have like your moderate believers on each side, and then you have the extremists, and then you have very few people that are just kind of neutral. You might get people that don't care, but that's definitely a thing. Like I know some of my friends are just like, I just don't care about politics. They don't vote, whatever. Yeah, I'm not here to debate about politics. What I'm here to say is that we all think that there's different sides to this, and that's what I'll call them puppet masters. That's what they want you to believe, right? So you have like your politicians, you have your CEOs, you have your giant mega corporations, right? And the thing is, they're all in cahoots. They're all working together in this one big circle. And this isn't really a foreign concept. I'm sure you've probably heard people talk about that before, but something that maybe you hadn't heard is that those on both sides are really just one big party. So like the Clintons and the Trumps, right? Like Hillary Clinton ran against Trump a couple years back, and they try to act like they're like enemies or stuff, and that's what like the media and that's what like the average person in society believes. But the truth is, I bet you money these people are friends behind closed doors. They've had cross paths many times in the past. And then if you look at a lot of politicians or CEOs and stuff, like they'll just randomly flip parties out of nowhere. Like Trump, he was like one of the biggest donors for the Democratic Party, and then he's like running Republican and has all these conservative values. And then you see people like like Zuckerberg and all these people. Zuckerberg goes online and he says, all the Biden administration was kind of like making us lie on Twitter about like certain things or whatever, about like the COVID and the Hunter Biden's laptop, whatever. I'm not here to put my opinion on that, but all I'm saying is, it's funny because now Zuck was at Trump's second inauguration, and so like these people, they just flip sides. And so really the truth is these people are all controlled by one big group. And you can kind of do your homework as to who that group of people is. I have my opinions, but nothing's like definitive or like an absolute fact. Now, I definitely have my strong opinions about it, but I'm not here to tell you who those people are. I'm here to explain why I think, we have a revolution or we're due for a revolution. But yes, you have all these people, and each side will flip. The country will flip on who they choose politically. And they're going to be like, oh, this is going to get better. Gas prices are going to get better. Education is going to get better. X, Y, and Z communities are going to get better. Stuff like that. Like, human rights are going to get better. I don't know. You get what I'm saying. And the funniest thing is, like, year over year, it doesn't matter which political party is running Congress or which Supreme Court judges or which ones passed away and got replaced, and it doesn't matter who's won the presidential branch or who's the president, what their cabinet is, all this stuff, none of it matters. And it always, if you really just like look at it objectively from a third party and don't attach your pride to it, you'll realize that like it's more or less the same. And it just, as time is progressing, we at one point our country was like going up, and this I'm talking like before I was born, but now it's just progressively going on the downhill, getting worse. It doesn't matter who's in charge, because these people, they're all one big happy family together, and their greed and their corruption grows as we kind of are the backbone that's paying them. And it's just like ridiculous, and it's so obvious. You another good example of this is like you obviously have heard of the situation with Epstein and Epstein's Island and stuff, and like the average folk like me and you, we all are wondering, why aren't they releasing the logs of who went to the island? And there's not really a good reason not to. Some people will say certain things, but there's really objectively not a good reason to not release the logs. But the reason they're not released is because they are the politicians who have the ability to release it are the ones that are all owned by the mega corporation CEOs, and they themselves are also on the log. So the people that are the corrupt ones that are on the log, that were in that paperwork, are the only ones that can release it. Like, this is an obvious conflict of interest, and there's like nothing the average person can do about it. But me and you, we all know that to be pretty much the truth at this point. And like I said, like on that list, it's like we can pretty, not like not as an absolute fact say who's on that list, but we have a pretty good idea. It's like you have people that the society used to love, like Oprah. I'm sure she's, or Ellen DeGeneres, or Trump, or the Clintons, or like whoever, people on both sides of the political aisle. And they're all just friends behind closed doors, and they control everything. And yeah, they were like 100%. There were many politicians and celebrities and like talk show hosts and all these people that were involved with this. There's no question that Hollywood is corrupt, and that there's a lot of really interesting, weird things going on there. And these people are all in cahoots. And then another thing, it's like just such an obvious conflict of interest. It's like Epstein was like almost undeniably at this point involved with Mossad and the Israeli government. And like America and Israel are like this. I'm not even trying to get political. That's just a fact. We give Israel like billions of dollars, and it's like very questionable, because what really do we get in return? But I'm not trying to like pick sides here, but it's so obvious that you have conflicts of interest. And then it's like you have the people that were working on, at this moment in time when I'm recording this video, I think like a couple weeks ago, they released like Epstein Files Part 1, and like it was more classified than the stuff that was already made public. So like it didn't tell us anything. And the Trump administration's like, we're gonna make sure like we get this out. And then you like look at the people that he has a part of the team to release the files, and they're all like objectively, like they've gone on record, they're like Zionist. And I'm not saying whether or not Zionists are good. Like I said, I don't want to have an opinion here, but they're obviously all pro-Israel, and Israel is like 100% involved in this. And so, I'm not trying to pick sides here. I feel like I'm getting monotonous by saying that, but you kind of just like look at, the situation with Epstein and his relationship with Mossad and all this stuff. So none of this is a definitive fact, but like to me, it's just like, it's the truth in my head. But, I could be wrong, but you know what I'm saying? Anyways, then I move over to, the education system, because you have politics, you have education system. If you look at the history, it was like the Rockefellers who pretty much founded the Board of Education. They funded it, and their money continues to this day to support it. And then you have like family friends of the Rockefellers who are also like these mega rich families who are also funding the Board of Education. And they've all, like, the Rockefellers have been quoted by saying, we're in the business of building workers, not thinkers. Rockefeller himself, he also one time had a quote where he said that people will be too busy working to think. All this is just to go to say, like, the education system, in my opinion, if you look at it from like a third person perspective, just objectively, the information that you're learning in school is really not relevant to like real world stuff. And they just kind of want to design a system that makes you, that pretty much puts you into like this type of slavery where you're just kind of doing what you're told. You work for a corporation who doesn't care about you, who after you work for them for like 40 years will lay you off and replace you overnight, maybe by AI because they don't care, things like that. And I feel like it's the average human experience, at least in the West at this point, for these people to just kind of go to college. And at least like all the people in my hometown, kids my age, they all just kind of go to college. No one's really interested in what they're doing. They made these kids go into so much debt just to go to college, and then they're doing like a major that they don't even know if they wanted to do, because you have to actually have experience with it before you would know whether or not it's something you want to pursue. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, it's very obvious the average person is just kind of slaving away at some like wage job or salary job for some corporation that doesn't care about them. And there's, all these different issues going on with that. But the reason I bring it up is because it's super obvious that like most people are unfulfilled at this point. It's actually like they've done studies, and it's like, I think like on average 70% of Americans are unfulfilled. And the main ones that are fulfilled, they're fulfilled because of their family. They're not fulfilled because of their career, which in my opinion is how it should be. I think family is like one of the most beautiful things you could do, is to build a family. And that's all good. But just the reason that I'm saying this is because it's almost like we're just like we're alive, but we're not living. We're kind of just going through the process, but most of us aren't like actually able to enjoy it. I'm only 21, but like I've been doing school and work together, and it's really hard to have the free time to do what I want. I definitely have more free time than some people, so I don't really want to complain, but at the same time it's just like most weeks I'm working like I'm in school full time and then working like 35 to 40 hours, which is pretty much full time as well. And then, trying to hit the gym and eat healthy and do these things. I mean, that's fine. But, the whole reason why I want to say that a revolution is due is because if you look at the average, American, like, and if you look at the statistics, like the rates of mental health issues are just skyrocketing like this. And it's crazy because we're more advanced, we're more technologically advanced, and you can really go do anything you want more in today's world than ever before with technology and stuff. Like if you go 200 years in the past, if you broke your leg pretty bad, they would have to like amputate it, or you'd be limping for the rest of your life, or whatever, it might get infected, you might die from it. Like that's only 200 years in the past. So we literally live in the best time ever, and yet like the rates of depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, like all these different issues are like skyrocketing. And it's because we've developed a society where we're just like slaves to the higher ups and the systems. And that's why I think we're due for a revolution. But the real question is how do you do the revolution? And at this point, I'm under the impression that it's really not, it's possible, but it's really not realistic in any sense of the word, because with, in the past, we didn't have like a global web. So when the citizens of of some sort of country or system felt like they were being oppressed by their government, they could sort of like meet up. And it's not like anyone has iPhones and is recording this. It's not like news could just spread town very fast. Now there were different methods of spreading news back then with newspapers, word of mouth, stuff like that. But for the most part, it really wasn't on that high of a level. It just subjectively wasn't as easy as it is today. And so the thing is like the government is obviously controlling our phones. Like you're limited to what you can see on your phone and stuff like that. Obviously you can go through the black web and certain things like this, but the truth is that you just have all these people who are more or less tired of what's going on, but they're literally like thinking in their head, oh, no one else is like kind of willing to go and revolt. Because think about it, the government has so much, like if it's like a physical revolt, then the government can easily, like they have all, like, not that they would nuke, but like they have so much like military weapons and all this stuff, like you're not going to overthrow them physically. And then if you were to go on like a sort of like a technological revolution where you try to like somehow restart the web or something like that, like this is just all unrealistic, and the systems are so like built into our society and everything that it's like, even me making this video, I don't know how we would have a revolution. It just seems, you might have heard the phrase tragedy of the commons. Now, tragedy of the commons basically says that like let's say, let's take recycling as an example. Like you might believe in recycling, but because you know that you're only one person and there's millions of people on Earth, you choosing to recycle or not recycle literally doesn't matter, because it's so insignificant to in comparison to the masses that you don't do it. But then everybody else has this exact same mentality, and you can't like overthink it, because it's just like it's, you only have your perspective. So it's called the tragedy of the commons, because then everyone's just like, oh, I don't care. And then when everybody has this mentality, it makes it worse. It's the same idea with with if we wanted a revolution, you obviously are going to need people, but everyone's going to be like, oh, I would do it if everyone would do it, but you can't get everybody on board. So, as far as how realistic it is, it's really hard. But in the meantime, we all just slave away at these jobs. Depression, anxiety, mental health disorders are rising. People are unemployed at a higher, or unfulfilled at a higher level than ever before. We're tricking people into believing things that don't matter or do. Somehow we have told like women that like having children, like they're like, ooh, it's like kind of like a boss lady thing, like not have children, like live your life. It's like, dude, if you're a man, the best thing you could do is have a child. It's not exclusive to like women or men, but having children, having a family, in my opinion, is like, obviously it's like a no-brainer in my head. It's like the ultimate goal. That's my goal in life, is to have a wife and children, and there's literally nothing wrong with that. It's like the most beautiful thing you could do. They're like trying to like brainwash these like women into being like these like men hating like figures. I mean, it's just reality. Like I'm really not trying to get like opinionated, but like you can't tell me that you live in America and don't feel the same way. Where it's like, what happened to um, men loving women and women loving men? Instead, they have us attacking each other all the time. Like it just doesn't make sense. And so what they've done is they basically got us so that our pride is attached to certain things like ideologies and stuff. And then we're so focused on like saying that the other side is wrong. And it's never about the other side being wrong. It's always about the person feeling morally righteous or self-righteous, because like they want to feel good about themselves because their job isn't fulfilling, their day-to-day life isn't fulfilling. It's like these people that are on the opposite sides of the political spectrum, they like to point their fingers at the other side and say like, hey, you are like, you're this type of person and you don't like these type of people, and like, wow, you're such a terrible person. They don't really care about like that other person, because when they go home that night, they're never going to see that person again. They just care about making themselves feel better, like, ooh, I'm not like that person, and they'll like, and it's hard for our brains to differentiate. Like I've been victim of that myself. Like sometimes in whatever situations, like at work, I'll be like, oh, that person, like we have the same job and I'm better than them, and it's like, what does that even have to do with me? That's like such a stupid like mindset to have. And it's the same thing in the real world. So they have us like all yelling at each other and complaining at each other so that we don't actually figure out the root of the problem, which is the higher ups, the elitists, the puppet masters that are controlling everything. And at some point, I think that, I hope that, the people will wake up and realize what's actually going on. And somehow, some way, we're able to overthrow the government. But I just don't know how that would happen. But I think we're due for it. Like it's an absolute no-brainer that we're due for a revolution. Like why are we just sitting here and letting them take control of us? And it's like we're almost just like scared to like make any moves, because there was a when I used to be in sales, and they used to say, in humans the fear of loss is 2 times greater than the desire to gain. So in other words, we're seeing this position where we don't want to like try to do anything because we're scared that like if you went against the government, they throw you in jail, they deport you, like whatever it would be. That we're more scared of that than what's on the positive end of that outcome, which would be like create like being able to break down the government and our society and then rebuild it how we want it. These things are so great emotionally in our heads that we're like not willing to take the steps. And there's also this other, there's a phrase for this. I don't remember what it was, but the worst place to be is to be just comfortable enough to where you're not willing to change, but you're on like the lowest end of that comfort. So like, let's say this is like your comfort spectrum, right? And so this side right here on the comfort spectrum is like what the least, or like the worst life you'd live, where you wouldn't be willing to change. And this is like the highest, right? But like a lot of people, like the way they've set up society is so that you're like right here, you're just happy enough to where you're not willing to change. You're just comfortable enough to where you're not willing to change, when in reality actually having a worse life, so like going here and then bypassing the comfort zone puts you here, where you'll take the action to then put yourself and change your situation. Like the government in this, whoever's running society and everything knows exactly where to put us and this positions to put us so that we stay here, so we're not willing to go out of our comfort zone, to the point where we actually want to take an action, or we actually want to take action towards making a better life. Now, what is my like advice to people, I guess, with what they could do? I would say just try to be aware, because one of the biggest things is that a lot of people, they kind of fall into two categories. One, they're like uninformed, they're not woken up, however you want to say it. Like that, people will say the Matrix, whatever, like they're asleep. And then the other one is like they're just simply not motivated enough. Like they're at the point where they're like exhausted, they're beat down, and they just couldn't be paid enough to care. You know what I'm saying? Like those people, most of them tend to be like older. They're like, hey, I just want to like put in a few more years, retire, blah blah blah. But the thing is, we have to take control of our own lives. We're the master, we're the captain of our ship, the master of our fate. So yeah, just become aware. Like look at what's going on in all aspects of society and politics and the education system. And I think the corporates, the people that are responsible for kind of what's going on will become evidently clear to you. And that's really for you to figure out. But hopefully in a few years from, not most likely it won't be a few years from now, but hopefully in my lifetime, there will be a revolution where we can actually change and create a society where everything is not so greedy and everyone isn't just trying to figure out how to put themselves in front, and where we actually have a society where men plant trees of which the trees will create shade for the next generation. So yeah, just keep all of that in mind, and continue to put your head down and work, and hopefully at some point we can get there. The last thing I'll say before I end this video is I wouldn't be surprised if in the next X amount of years, maybe like next 5 years, there's some sort of massive grid blackout where the grid just goes offline. And 100% I'm going to believe if it ever happens, they're going to blame it on like something. They'll blame it on something. Maybe it'd be like the weather. Like they'll say like, oh, the sun was in this position in comparison to the earth, or whatever it is. Like there was like some sort of virus that went on every device, and we want to make sure we wipe it, so we had to wipe the grid. Like they're gonna make an excuse, but the truth is it's going to be the government, and they are going to wipe the grid. And it's not just going to be the United States, the UK, it's going to be the entire world. And then they're going to try to revamp the internet, or like restart the grid eventually. And by the way, when this happens, millions and millions and millions of people will die, because everything that we need is the society and the lifestyle that we've established in these first world countries is based off of the grid. People with electric cars won't be able to drive. It depends on how the extent of the blackout, but there won't be heating, so you're going to need to get a bunch of firewood. People are going to have to actually go out and get their own food, and which is going to lead to violence and stuff like that. But what's going to happen is eventually they'll reestablish the grid, but in this new grid, they're basically going to make you like sign in, so you have like an ID attached to every single thing you do on the internet, so that the government can control. And not the government, they're going to, when I say government, I don't mean literally the government, I mean the people that are controlling the government, if you understand what I'm saying. But those people, they're going to want to have all your information basically to keep you a slave. So you have to do as they say, because they can take away your bank account, they can take away your access to resources, they could take away your ability to communicate with your family and loved ones. All these things they're going to try to take, because everything will be based off the grid, and there's going to be an ID attached to everything that you're doing. And I believe that this is going to happen within like the next 5 years. I hope I'm wrong. I would love to look back on this in 5 years from now and be very wrong. But maybe not 5 years, maybe 20 years down the line. But I do believe that eventually one day it will happen, and it will be intentional by the elites of the elites, the puppet masters, to control us. People are going to look at this video and they're going to say I'm conspiratorial or whatever, but you know, the funny thing is as time has gone on, more and more conspiracies that people thought were like ridiculous, like some of the stuff Alex Jones said, people were like, that's so ridiculous, and then it turns out to be right. You know, I'm not saying I agree with Alex Jones. I think he's kind of a meme, but the point still stands, is like these things that you think are so crazy, nothing's too crazy for these people that are in control. They're willing to do anything to stay on top and to control us. So stay safe, everybody.